All right, welcome back to the Nerve Guys podcast where we discuss movement from the point of view of the brain. My name is James, and this week we are discussing the question, push through or be gentle, which causes the best effects when it comes to rehabbing the body, rehabbing the brain, or even with skill acquisition in general. So that's what we will be talking about. As always, this is brought to you by the Neuroband, the wearable vision and balance training tool designed to improve posture, focus, and coordination. We'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but now let's get into intensity. So this is a debate that I always felt is a little bit one-sided. I feel like the world that we live in today is very much built up around the idea of, don't let your feelings hold you back and always live up to what you potentially could become. So it's all kind of based around this, like, go hard or go home, make sure you're pushing yourself to the max. And apart from like small groups or clusters of people, I don't really see very many people taking the approach of like, no, actually, you should be taking care of your body. You should be taking everything with a much more gentle approach. And there's a couple of reasons for this. So the big reason, I think, is the same as I believe before we've done a podcast on the gym industry being a scam. I can't remember if we actually published it, so let me know if that's not out there and I'll redo it. But we have this sort of approach when it comes to success, which I think is highlighted really well by how gyms promote things, which is you take an athlete who's really successful, and then you say, okay, so you want to be like this person. They're ripped and they're strong and they're rich and they're good looking and they're all the things that you want to be. So if you want to be them, then you need to be like them. And we're going to give you all of the training plans, all of the meal plans, all of the skincare routines that this athlete or this celebrity follows in order to look and be like they currently are. And the problem with that is two things. So one, what they're doing now to be like they currently are is not what they did when they were at your level or your position. And actually, a lot of the time, maybe they were never even at your level or your position. Maybe the trajectory that they went through was so entirely different from anything that is even possible for you that it's totally not fair to compare the two. But in my experience, when I've worked with people who have gone on to become very successful, usually when they were doing a lot of this stuff, they were kids, and all of the coaches were kind of biased around making sure they were having a good time. And, they were being pushed and they were being developed, like they were being nourished in the area of their talents and things like that. But 100%, I've never met anyone who was training like this, like self-disciplined madman when they were a child. They were always just doing it for the joy and the love of it. And maybe there's an argument that there's some successful people who did have that kind of approach, but I don't really think you see it very often where they end up in a very healthy position after. And a lot of the time, if you read the Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, a lot of the time these people have had some kind of like traumatic or scary event in their childhood that gives them, while they're developing, like the thought of like, I'm not enough, I need to be more. And that's not really something that you want to be taking with you anyway. And then the second side of why these athletes are able to do all these crazy intense workouts is that they're just not doing that much else. So, there's a difference between an Olympian going and doing a 4-hour workout and then taking a nap for the rest of the day, and you doing the same 4-hour workout and then going to work and then doing something else afterwards. The elite athletes always have the other side of their training that isn't being shown nailed down. So the rest is super important. All of the stress management, the few Olympians I've worked with have all had psychologists on hand, like they're seeing regularly. That's just part of what they get provided with. And, most everybody else I work with just doesn't have that. So following that same intense, extreme workout just doesn't really work. And then when it comes to do we push through or do we be gentle with ourselves, then the other side of what happens is these athletes are going to get interviewed. And when you're at the top of the hill, looking back on how you got there, you don't necessarily provide a super reliable narrative on what you had to deal with to get to where you were. So somebody who's just won world championships isn't going to say, oh man, it was a tough road, but I made sure to get plenty of rest, and I made sure that I pushed myself to 60% of my capacity most of the time, and then sometimes I went up to that 90%. Your brain only really likes to think about the bad stuff. We prioritize all the negative emotions, and we pay more attention to those because our brain feels like it's better from a survival perspective. So when we look back on getting there, we think yeah, man, I really worked hard to get this. Every day was a grind. Every single time I was doing things, I was just going full tilt, and I got injured and I couldn't stop. I had to push through, and this happened and I couldn't stop and I had to push through. And if you were to go back and actually physically verify a lot of that stuff, you'll find that it's true, but it's not true the way it sounds like it's true. Elite athletes are pushing through and working hard every single day, but I think it's very easy to get the message. It's if you're in pain, just ignore it. If you're bleeding, just ignore it. If you're on fire, just ignore it. None of these things matter. If you just keep going, you're going to get to where you need to be. And that side of it's just not true. All of the negative emotions, all of the negative symptoms that you're dealing with have to be dealt with at some point. You can't just push them aside and keep them pushed aside forever. It's just not how it works, and it's not possible. You are going to need to reconcile with all that stuff at some point. And it is true that elite athletes maybe push through things a little bit more than other people, but also don't forget that their entire careers are a lot shorter than how long you might want to expect to have, good movement and longevity and stuff like that. Anytime you see the pictures of runners' feet and things like that, they look like a crumpled mess, and nobody is arguing that that is healthier. The problem is once you've reached that very, very top level of sport, if you're not willing to do the bad, unhealthy, dangerous thing, somebody else is. And so you get into this race to the bottom, which is also the race to the top, in that you've gone past the point of what is healthy, and now you're just pushing yourself harder and harder and harder, knowing that the moment you stop, everything will have been for nothing, and somebody else who's willing to ruin themselves more than you were is just going to sail past you and take that top spot. So this argument is very biased, but I think you can probably see where I sit on my side of things. I do not think that pushing through things is a very healthy way to be. I feel like for the majority of humans, the better way to think of it, if we're going to take an 80-20 principle, 80% of the time, what we really need to be training is training ourselves so that the harder thing that we're doing is effortless and easy. And then 20% of the time, we can run ourselves into the ground and let ourselves recover from that. So there is benefit to both of these things, but the pushing through the difficult stuff is something that we have to achieve in small doses. So if you're always pushing yourself hard, if you're always pushing yourself into pain, if you're always pushing yourself into stress, your brain is going to learn that that is what you expect life to be like, and you're never actually going to get to experience anything else. Anytime you're dealing with something, if it's not stressful enough, the brain says, oh man, we haven't trained for this. We need to start simulating things so that they're more difficult. So they will start to come up with, stressful things in your head. They might be real, they might be justified, they might just be totally made up. Your brain is just going to start going, okay, cool, how can I get you to start panicking? Because that's when we start to thrive. And you might see that your performance goes up and your abilities and skills increase, but your enjoyment of all of it's going to be way, way worse. The healthier approach to all of this is to say, okay, I'm going to go running every day. How much am I going to run? I'm going to spend most of my time when I'm doing my regular training. The running is supposed to look and feel easy. So I'm going to run at the pace that is easy for me to do. And then I'm just going to spend time pushing into the discomfort. So I'm going to push into discomfort for as long as I can manage, and then I'm just going to drop it down, push into the discomfort, drop it down. The thing that you want to learn is the ability to drop back down. So you go make it hard, and then the thing that you focus on is, once it's hard, how do I make myself start having a good time? How do I make it start feeling effortless again? And that is the actual gold in training. You lift all the heavy weights, you throw all the difficult stuff, and the person who makes it look effortless is able to move up to the higher level and again make it feel effortless and look effortless. The person who's pushing through pain, the person who's pushing through difficulty, makes it look difficult, makes it look painful, and feels difficult and painful the entire way through. Both of them are at the same level of ability, but one person is enjoying their quality of life much more. Over time, then we said 80-20, so sporadically throughout your training, it can be really good to put yourself in a crazy, difficult, intense, stressful situation. But when we're in this situation as well, the goal is not to be there, to hang out there. The goal is, when I push myself into this, I focus on being able to bring myself back down. So getting the stress levels to return back to normal is always going to be your sole focus. So I'm going to leave it there for that one today. That is my thoughts on pushing through versus being gentle. If you want a gentle way to train and work your nervous system hard, then you can do that with the NeuroBand. That is not a sponsor. That is my training tool that I have developed with my company Rewire Neurodynamics. It's Vision and Balance. That is the best way to get the highest intensity impact to your brain and nervous system without causing huge amount of physical stress through the joints. It comes with 2 little workouts you can do start of the day, end of the day. We'll ship the band out currently anywhere in the world. As long as politics stays safe enough, then hopefully that's not going to change. So I'll leave a description. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.